All right, we're back. And we're back for what? It's time to just make a decision. What type of routing should we use? Should we use static routing? Or should we use dynamic routing? What are the differences? In this example, sounds like a real, right? Like a real classroom. In this example, right, it wouldn't be bad to use static routing. What are the benefits of static routing? Static routing puts no overhead on your router. Meaning your CPU is not being burdened with these algorithms and calculations and all that. You're the one that's putting the static routes on there, right? So it doesn't have to think. There's no updates being sent out on every so often, right? So security-wise, bandwidth-wise, it makes it a lot better, okay? Security, bandwidth, no overhead on processing. But as far as for yourself, that will be the benefits, but for yourself, you need to make sure that you keep track. So that will be, I guess, maybe if you want to call it a disadvantage or job security, one of the others, all right? Because you need to maintain subnets that you put in or subnets you take out, because you need to update every static routing table. Small network like this, it wouldn't be a big deal. And what number do we decide? Is there a number? I've never seen a number. So I can tell you from my experience, my real world experience, schools, campuses, 7 campuses. Each campus had 2 routers. But the 2 routers there were 2 different subnets that weren't being routed internally. They were just going somewhere else, right? They had their own T1 connections, what have you. Anyway, the routing tables were small. They weren't that big. So it was easy to maintain. You had an IT personnel per campus, so it wasn't that difficult. But as that particular college grew, and grow it did, all right, then definitely they had to change to something else. I don't know what they're doing now, but I can assure you it's not static routing. But again, being in telecommunications, where you have, over 11, 12, 13, 15,000 sites that are point-to-point, you do static routes. So backbone routers, but anyway, I'm getting off the topic. Static routes are okay for small, medium-sized networks. They're easier to configure. Something quick, hey, and get it done. All right, but again, it's a burden on you depending on how many subnets your router doesn't know about. Remember, when you do static routes, you got to tell this router, because routers only know who they're connected to directly. So this router knows about the 10.1.1.4 network and knows about the 192.168.1.0. That's it. You got to tell a router, hey, there's a 2.0, a 10.1.1.8, and a 3.0. All right, so static routes, again, I would say, just to give it a number, no more than 10 routers, and depending on the amount of subnets you have in there, okay? And if you're suffering from bandwidth issues, definitely maybe a static route will help you, okay? So static routes could be a good idea now. But what about dynamic routing? And then when you think about dynamic routing, it's okay, dynamic routing, you got algorithms that are going to calculate a certain path to the network, to the destinations, You have updates that get sent out, or triggered updates. It all depends on the routing protocol. So now you got another decision. Okay, we're going to use dynamic routing, ladies and gentlemen. That's the way we're going to go. Well, I have a question. Which dynamic routing protocol are we going to use? Are we going to use RIP version 2? Are we going to use EIGRP? Are we going to use OSPF? Now, why do I mention only those 3? Because those are the ones you're being tested on. Are there more? Sure, there's ISIS, there's BGP. All right, when you start getting into other levels of certifications, when to apply them, where to apply them, and how. But we don't care about that right now. We're trying to get the CCNA. So you need to make a decision which routing protocol. Obviously, RIP here, small network. But what will be the disadvantage of RIP version 2? That every 30 seconds, distance vector sends out its updates. Even though you already know you have fully converged. We all know about each other's routing tables. But every 30 seconds, RIP is still going to send you the full routing table, or the full in the updates. So it's taking up your bandwidth. If you're, even if you have a massive T1 line, and you have a lot of traffic going through there, that could be a problem. Can you tweak those timers? Sure you can. Sure. You can tweak the timers to, be less, take a little bit more time. Instead of 30 seconds, maybe 90 seconds or 120 seconds, send the update. I will not use EIGRP, right? EIGRP only does it one time. When they fully converge, then it's based on changes. But EIGRP is still a distance vector. It won't send the whole routing table, but we have to use what? Only Cisco routers. We have to only use Cisco routers, proprietary. It's proprietary. Still limited to hop counts. Does calculate to find out what the metric is, right? Best metric, best path to the network. But in this case, really, we have a straightforward network. There's no, redundancy or anything. You're going straight that way or straight this way. So if you want to use EIGRP, you could. All right. Are you going to grow? The growth of the company, right? Are you going to have multiple autonomous systems? That's something to consider. Okay. Or you should have just one. For the purpose of the CCNA, just one. What about OSPF? Now we can use any router we want, right? Very complex, very processor intensive. A lot of calculations with the shortest path first, tongue twister, algorithm. So it all depends what you want to do. So you got to make a decision based on your network, based on the needs, as far as, hey, the bandwidth, how big are we, how many subnets we have. So it's not a straightforward question. If anybody says, well, what are you going to use, static or dynamic? Well, I haven't analyzed my network yet. I don't know what it is I'm going to do. So you may just want to use static. A lot of the questions you may run into when it comes to static or dynamic is just that you may, if you see things like, what is the easiest way? What is the quickest way? What will be less overhead on a router? What will be less intense on a router? Static routes, static routes, static routes, static routes. That will be the way to go, especially on a network so small like this. Now, when we get to the configuration part, we will do it here, but I'm also going to show you how to do it on the live routers. I have 1841 routers, and I got only two PCs. I got my PC and another PC hooked up, so you can actually see the prompt, okay, of the live router. So for those of you that think, it's a packet tracer, and it's, it's not the same. It's the same thing. All right, it's the same exact thing. All right, now can you have more features on a real iOS? Yes, you have more features. You have more commands. But again, what's the packet tracer for? For CCNA purposes. If you have a live lab, hey, good for you. All right, but again, I'm going to show you. We'll do both. We'll do the packet tracer, and then I'll show you in the live routers, right? So you can see how it goes back and forth. It's still the same commands. Nothing changes. Nothing changes. A static route is a static route. A routing protocol is a routing protocol. But you definitely need to make a decision: static versus dynamic. And just to break it down already, static routes, good for the router, bad for you. All right. Well, bad for you, or like I said, job security, because then depending the size of it, you will be maintaining that. That'll be an 8-hour job to maintain. If not, if you're going to use dynamic routing, then bad for the router, right? The router is calculating all sorts of algorithms and math, trying to find out which way to go, especially if you have a lot of redundancy and all that. But good for you, because all you got to do is just put the network that you're connected to. It's the opposite, right? Because dynamic routing is routing by rumor. You kind of snitch yourself out, right? And we'll be configuring all the routing protocols, all those 3 routing protocols. We'll be configuring them both for IPv4 and IPv6, so you can see both, okay? But again, you first got to make the decision, which one do I use? But, and I haven't mentioned one yet. But definitely, the first configuration, once we get to do the configurations, we'll probably be doing a combination of something called default. Give it away. All right, but we'll talk about that in a little bit. Default and static routing. And then we'll implement the routing protocols as we progress into the course. All right, so there you go. That's static versus dynamic. No big deal. You have to make the choice. Stay thirsty, my friends.